I want to talk a little bit about you, not me, about your health, your mental health, etc., etc. Now, don't switch off. Just give us a second. What I've been noticing in the media at the moment is they're now pushing about mental health, anxiety, people being alone. Well done, because you've created this not being you, this being the media. So obviously, when I set this channel up, I wanted to talk about the way I felt. And it seemed that people then pitched in the comments and they realized that, I realized I wasn't alone, but they realized they weren't alone. Now, I've been pretty honest about my faults, my problems and stuff like that. And I've put it on here for all to see because I have it doesn't bother me. You know, a lot of people go, oh, I couldn't tell anybody about this or that. It simply doesn't bother me. You know, I'm a human being at the end of the day with all my faults and flaws. And anybody who can't admit they got a fault or flaw, well, they've got a fault in a flaw in that itself. But it seemed lately, because I've looked through the comments, that you help yourselves, you help each other, you help me, I help you. It's working. But I've noticed that there's a lot of isolation at the moment. I've suffered it. Now, if I suffer it and I've got 64,000 subscribers just on one channel alone, and a network of people that I talk to, God knows how people who don't have that are feeling. A lot worse, I would imagine. A lot of you will be feeling trapped in a job where you are working you hate the job, it's not paid enough, you work with people you don't particularly like, you work for a boss who's an arsehole. And then when you go home, some of you may go home to an empty flat or a house. Some of you may have been bereaved. Some of you may split up with people. Some of you may just have ended up being alone because humans are getting on your top note. I don't know. You've all got your own reasons, but what I do know is that isolation is a killer, all right? Many of you are thinking about, should I go out and speak to somebody? Should I not? How are they going to react? Well, you don't know unless you try. And yes, there are going to be people out there that do your head in, but you need to get out and you need to speak to people. And shutting yourself away, right, like I have done, is very bad for you because it then becomes a habit. That habit's hard to break. And being alone, the more you're alone, the more depression creeps in and says, I'm your friend. I'm the only one you need. And we all know where that ends. Now, there are factoring things in life that will bring you down, make you miserable, whatever. And I've just got rid of one. I was working with a guy in the last job who felt identical to me. He said, this job just sucks the living soul out of you. You can't do anything at night, and on the weekends you're just recovering, and then you've got to go back and do it all again. And he says he pays you just enough to make you think that the money's good, but there again, he owns you. Because basically, even when you're not working, you're getting ready or getting over work, ready to go back and do it all again. So you might do X amount of hours a week, but essentially speaking, that job is now taking up your week. All right. There's very few hours on the weekend you actually feel anywhere near like doing anything. Now, some of you may be feeling that. I thought this is unacceptable. No amount of money, okay, is worth that, by the way, because all the I don't want to be depressing here, but the sands of your time are ticking down here, kids. All right. Boys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, I'm not being condescending. Please don't think I'm going to say that, right? The times are ticking away. These wrinkles I have on my face, they appeared. It seemed like overnight, but it wasn't overnight. Time literally goes like that, and I can't click my fingers because I'm stupid. Anyway, I've realized how time is passing on. I realized that you can't get it back, and you have to try and do something with your life now. Now, if you're watching this, you're probably more worried about the future than the average Joe, because part of my channel is talking about the future, etc., and what we've got to face and how things are going badly wrong at the moment and what we should do or what we shouldn't do or how to take care of yourself, all sorts of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going around depressed, which I was, anxious, tearful, angry, and all the other emotions that of unreasonableness that come out when you're exhausted and frustrated and just utterly overwhelmed by the futility of your life, which is the way I was feeling, right? Then it can lead on to worse things, suicidal thoughts, etc. People will go deal with it differently. They'll either get drunk, they'll get drugged, or they'll self-harm, or they'll get violent towards others. There's all sorts of factors that can come out of feeling what I was feeling or what you may be feeling, all right? But just, for God's sakes, don't feel trapped. There are people out there that are homeless, that are happier than rich men. Why? Because they've gotten rid of their troubles. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second to be homeless, not at all. although I have been homeless, and I have to say it wasn't as bad as you think it was. I was living in a van, but I still managed to work. And though it was at times very, very depressing and lonely, because I felt I'd failed in life, actually, the more I've learned now, I realize that we've been taught to think that if we're not a good little worker and that we're not credited up to the eyeballs to pay for the house we were told we needed and the car we were told we needed to keep up with the Joneses, right? And funding a missus and 2.3 kids and the holidays that takes a year and all the rest of it and all the fashionable clothes that the kids expect because if they don't, they get bullied at school, all the rest of it, right? I was told, I believe that if I didn't do all of that, that I'd failed in life. Anyway, I worked out that that was the trap, right? The corporate trap. If you watch Century of Self, the Century of Self will explain all of that, how Sigmund Freud's nephew was approached by all the globalists and taught how to play with your mind until you became a good little server and a good little worker. And they needed to make you work as hard as you could, as many hours a day as you could, to try and, they call it over there the American dream, all right? We call it over here living the dream, but it is a dream because it's not real, okay? We all fall into that trap. And the education system, as I've talked about before, and I probably should do something about this, a story on how it was changed. But the education system was changed about between 1910 and 1920 over in America because people were too clever. The average person knew a little bit more than the globalists, the system, whatever it was, wanted you to know. So they learned how to teach you enough, change a bit of history, dumb you down, so you could be a good blue-collar worker. Now, we, since then, have gone through the schooling system that has bred us to be like this, all right? Now, when we fail and we don't end up with the big house, the missus, the kids, and all the rest of it, because there's a chance that we could have had that, say, for instance, in the 70s and the 80s. But because they've manipulated the financial systems, it makes it harder for the average person to get a house. You'll look at kids nowadays that are struggling to get their first house. And there are people who, even when they succeeded in getting a house, the system itself have managed to drive women and men apart because of, we'll go into that another time, but just imagine you've got one household paying all these bills. What's better than one household paying all these bills? Oh, yeah, two households paying all these bills. So, God, itchy nose. So we were taught to think one thing, and we were taught to go after that thing and do our best, right? We were indoctrinated. We've all been indoctrinated, okay? And then what they've done is they've changed the playing field to make more money, and we've all failed. I've seen people work really hard all their life to have business fail, and then they build up again and again and again, and the system pulls the rug out from underneath them again, and they fail. This is engineered, by the way, and it leaves people feeling very depressed. It also leaves other people looking at them thinking, what's the point in trying to go into business on my own? So you end up working for a big company and you end up getting shafted. Now, to make life worse, what they then do is bring cheap labour in from abroad, which makes the cheap labour feel exceptionally happy, outright, and work for very little because it's now 4 times more than what they were worth over there. Say, for instance, a cleaner in Romania gets 250 euros a month. That's full time, okay? Over here, obviously doing a lesser paid job, they get significantly more. Now, there's cost of living and stuff, but I won't go into more detail because I'm digressing if I do. What I'm trying to say here at the moment is a lot of people are working many, many hours and feeling very isolated because the people around them they don't recognise or they don't relate to or whatever, and people are pulling back. COVID was a massive problem to people's mental health. What it did is it put people locked away for a set amount of time and then did it again, and people got used to being isolated. This was by no means a mistake. Please don't think it was. Can you imagine a cohesive, I should say, society? Can you imagine a society that got on with their neighbour and chatted freely to their neighbour and didn't feel like there was anything between them that they weren't getting on with, other than the obvious, by the way, your tree's doing something to my fence or whatever, I don't know. We have all been engineered to feel isolated from each other in recent days and months and years, actually. And the reason for this is the system itself, as it screws you over, realizes if you had all those people talking to each other, getting along with each other, they would all then just turn at the thing that's fucking them and deal with it. However, what you do, if you're going to screw these people over, is you create something much bigger over there for them to focus on, and they don't see what you're doing. This has been this way since time, Right, it's always been that way. They call it bread and circuses, or they call it all sorts of other things. But we are given the next thing to look at and worry about, rather than actually turning around at the government and going, "You lot are fucking us out." But the consequence of this is that many of you are working or walking around at the moment. Some of you are unemployed because of reasons. Some of you are sick because of the system, the way it is, the food, the lack of this, maybe hereditary. All sorts of culminating reasons have made people ill. And people are, I think, becoming sicker now than, say, for instance, they were in the 2000s or whatever. But I digress again. What we're talking about is your mental health here. And as you know, I've made no bones about it. I've struggled with drink in the past, okay? And it's always going to be a problem, because even though I don't drink in the week, and I'll have a few on the weekend, just that few will affect my mental health for the next few days. Say, for instance, I went out tonight and had a skinful. In the morning, I'd wake up quite happy, but then in the afternoon, I'd start coming down, and it would be bad. But you have to offset good times against bad times. Is the Saturday night out worth the Sunday and the Monday? Well, probably say it wouldn't be, actually, to be honest. Excuse me a sec. Cold coffee. But there it is. We are approaching each other less. Men and women finding it incredibly hard. Dating sites are, most people find them useless. You get ghosted within seconds. This is just not me. Everybody's saying this, all right? But I had a friend who struggled like fuck with the dating sites. Really did. And she made an effort to go out to a friend's do and bumped into somebody the old-fashioned way. Now, I'm hoping, because it's looking good at the moment, that this works out. But this is how we used to do it in the old days. We met through people. That's the natural way of doing things. This is the most soulless way of doing things. I mean, take, for instance, this, me speaking to you this way. It's the only way I can do it, because I don't know where you live, to come around your house and have a chat, and I'd probably look like a stalker if I did. But you know what I mean. To speak to somebody face to face and to get the emotion from them, and sometimes they'll look at you and go, "Just give us a cuddle, mate." That cuddle makes all the difference. That can be the difference between life and death with some people. It has been for me. I have been in a very black place before. Because I've been there and I know the signs, I won't let myself go back there. But it's always a worry. And you're always fighting. If you've had mental health problems, right, for whatever reason, certainly not going to judge. You know, it could have been an accident in your life. It could have just been the way you're genetically programmed to be or suffer with depression and stuff like that. That's my problem. It's run through both sides of my family. They were back in the days, they were alcoholics, right? But you used alcohol to mask your problems back in the day. So I've had that on both sides. And I realize that it's an hereditary problem. I have to watch out for the signs. But some of you may have got depressed because of recent events. Some of you may have been depressed because of loss of a family member, an injury, some sort of PTSD. Because I don't understand PTSD enough. But I do understand that when your mate's head's been blown off right next to you and you're wearing half of his brains all over you, that's going to affect you, all right? Now, some people have taken PTSD and mugged it. Oh, I fell over on a pavement and I've had PTSD ever since. Fuck off. Grip you. Mate, I used to fall out of trees for fun when I was a kid. I nearly get run over by cars and come off my bike at God knows what. But you weren't programmed to be weak when you were a kid. We've been programmed to be weak, and then we adopt when somebody thinks we're just being a pussy. They give us a label, and I won't support that. I'll tell you, fucking man up. But there are things that it's not about manning up. I do know the difference between somebody who needs to man up and somebody who actually generally has an issue. But getting out there, and this is one of the biggest demons as well, because I had it. Remember, you might have seen the video about me going to the gym. I shit myself the first time I turned around. And I had to get a mate, Snowman, if you're watching, I had to get him to take me to the gym. Now, I can have a row. I can have a punch-up. That part doesn't bother me, although we avoid it, obviously. You know, I've been in some really dodgy situations, but something so stupid, so socially awkward as going into a gym where I didn't know people, I couldn't do it. I've done it now and since, and I've overcome my demons, and I'm better off for it. And, you know, it's really working out. But you have to take the initial step, and that's the hardest thing. But it will pay off, and it is worth it. If you are one of these people that locks yourself away, I want you to try it. You know, not for me, for you, all right? But when you do, I want you to comment on this video as well. Try something different. I mean, even if you hate shopping, just go out in the shops and try and make eye contact with somebody, because I put money on it. You wouldn't believe how many people out there are suffering as well as you, right? Who are suffering in silence. Do you know, I've been in the shops, and when somebody's actually smiled at me and said hi, it's here. I feel it up through here, and my face smiles. And I'm like, you know, I can't explain it, but it's lovely. And it gives me hope. And there's other people like that out there that if you do that to them, it gives them hope. These bastards out here are trying to ruin us. They don't like us. They want us all very weak, mentally broken creatures that can just make it to work, purchase their goods, and come home. That's all they want for you. They want you to have nothing and be happy. Leave off the be happy, all right? They don't want that at all. The very thought of you being happy makes them sick. These people are vile. They are the walking epitome of evil. I would imagine, and I'm not going down a God road, but if Jesus was about, he'd be a bit pissy, all right? I'm more spiritual, actually, you know, but I'm one of these people that believe that our ancestors didn't fight for our freedoms to let these people enslave us. When you work for a very small amount of wages and at the end of the week after you've paid all your bills, you've got nothing and all you've done is managed to live with a roof over your head, you've managed to eat, and sometimes you can't even put the heating on, that would be the equivalent of getting towards modern slavery. And some of you go, oh, fuck off. Modern, I said, not old-fashioned. Old-fashioned slaves were those who basically were snatched, beasted, beaten, fed very little, and probably died doing it. That was old-fashioned slavery, but modern slavery. I'll give you a good example, right? When we were locked down for the first time and we were told we were very lazy and they had to get these foreign people into work and pick our crops, even though there were people, English people, who were desperate to do it, but they weren't given the opportunity. And we were like, why? Turns out later on that what they did with these poor bastards that came in from places like Romania is that they knocked them for their wages. They put them in metal containers to sleep. They put them up in very, very poor accommodation. They made them work stupid amount of hours, and they treated them like shit. And the left patted themselves on the back that they gave some foreign worker the opportunity to better himself. It's a joke. Or we could call them the woke, because there are people on the left that would have looked at that and gone, that's shit, I don't like it. Because the left are human beings, same way the right are. And yet again, this is another divide that we're falling into. I think we should just actually put it, people who are decent and clued up, as to the brainwashed morons that'll do whatever they're told and repeat whatever they're told. Still, back to the story. If you do make it out and go and do something, even if it's just taking a walk and then making eye contact with people and just acknowledge them, good morning, good afternoon. If you went out a few times and you still spotted that person and you said good morning or good afternoon, there is a chance at some point they'll stop and say hello. Make a difference. I came to this village that I'm in at the moment, which is on the outskirts of Weston. I knew nobody. And it took me a while to get to know people. And when I came here, obviously I was badly depressed, just getting over the breakup of a relationship that I thought there was no point in carrying on after. Ridiculous, really, but that's how I felt. And I just couldn't see a future, but I got to know people here. And I speak to them, and I can go up the road now and see X amount of people, and you know, some of them now go high rev, which is nice. But it was either high rev, high psi, and they'll talk. And you might not get that in a big city. I can't talk for the cities, but I would imagine even in a big city, you'll get locals around, you know, your area that you'll bump into. But we do need to start speaking to each other, because being locked away will be the end of us, all right? Now, if I can get out and go to a gym, and I was the laziest person in the world, I would get my vehicle and drive just down to the shops, which is 150, 200 meters away. I had gout. I couldn't walk properly. I had pitting edema. I was 18 stone. I was drinking God knows how many pints a night and eating all the junk food going. If I can turn it around, and I consider myself to be historically lazy, all right, I'll work hard at work, but generally speaking, after that, I'll avoid work if I can. If I can do it, and I've been lazy all my life, I've never done sports, never done anything else, then you can do it. It will make a difference. Life is not over, all right? Just because the future is black, you can still have some fun if you network with other people. Seriously. I mean, what we also need to do is we know what's coming. We're aware of that. But you do have to live for today. And I found myself being completely sucked into the doom and gloom, which affects your mental health. And there are times you are going to have to put this down. Turn the TV off, all the rest of it. Go out for a walk. And if you can make it just outside into the countryside, right, you'll notice that the birds aren't political. Nor are the foxes. Nor are the trees. Nor is anything else. And that lot goes along as normal. And when you look at it, and you think my ancestors have been here, and they've been under this same sky that I'm under now, right? And they've wandered the same thoughts or similar stuff that I have. And you realize that all of this that you live under now it's made. It's man-made misery. And when you go out to the countryside and you see all of that out there, you realize that life is worth living and that's the real world. And this other shit that they've made up, right? It's real, but it's not. Okay? I think I'm getting across what I'm trying to say here, but there is a real world out there. Yes, we have threats and et cetera, and you do have to be aware of that. And we have a system that's inclined to put us last and others first. We know that as well. But you do, in between all of this, have to make some sort of a life for yourself. And as I say, isolation is not going to do that. Now, I hope this has been of some help. Comment, please, because I'll read your comments and others will as well. And you can, they also know then when you're commenting that they're not alone. This is why I encourage people to comment, because it was when you started commenting first on my videos that I went, okay, hell, it's not me just thinking this, everybody else is. And it was good for me and it was good for others. And others used to comment, I thought I was on my own. And then they realized they weren't. And this is also a good thing. When you realize that you're not alone in your thinking, okay, that you're not the only one that's going through this, not to lessen or make small of your situation, but you'll know that there's others going through it. I think one thing about the war, the First or Second World War, when the lads came back, as horrible as it, terrible as it had been, they realized that all the other men around them had been through it as well. And there was some sort of weird comforting factor that that man knows where I've been. He knows what I'm going through. And you could look at each other and just nod and stuff like that. We are unaware that each other are going through it because it is so isolating to us. We haven't been through a big war. We're going through a culture war at the moment. We're going through a political war. We're going through all sorts of stuff. But we're not recognizing that the person next to us is in that same war with us or that same feeling or whatever. But it is when you nod to that person going down the road a few times and you eventually get talking to them and they open up, you'll realize that, well, they're probably feeling the same thing as you and you're not on your own. Now, when you do this, the system will hate you for it because the system doesn't want you lot talking to each other. But it's important, imperative that you talk to each other. Anyway, I think I've said enough. And yeah, a few more of these are going to come out. And I hope to do all sorts of different stuff if I get the chance. But I couldn't do it in that job. So fuck off. Simple as that. And if I go on hard times because I can't get as much work as I wanted, so be it. This, to me, is more important than filling somebody's pockets and getting depressed and struggling with anxiety and exhaustion and all the rest of it. For what? Moving mud from one place to another, only to find the next year you got to go back, pick it up and take it somewhere else. No thanks. Anyway, this is the new way of doing it. I've tried this through OBS at the moment because the normal camera system won't read my Blackmagic thingy 4-pin doofer. Probably because I'm stupid. Or it could be because this application's using it. I don't know. I'm no computer tech. But whatever. Anyway, I hope some of this advice works. It worked for me. And I'll see you in a bit.